Hello, welcome to Liberty Explored. I'm Isaac the Explorer, and today I want to explore a little bit in a different direction than we normally do. And I want to talk and go into this video I have to share with you from Jordan Maxwell. And the reason I want to share this is because he has a perspective that I very much agree with, which is that we are on more of a digression of advancement versus a improvement over time. We are not becoming more advanced. We are actually digressing from a much more advanced state that we used to be in. And I think that Plato talked about Atlantis, and sometimes I'll propose the idea that America was once a much greater place. But I really like what he has to say here, and so I just wanted to share it with you. So let's get right into it. So Jordan Maxwell is awesome. If you haven't checked him out, I recommend you go and check it out. And I know a lot of my science friends will totally deny the things that he has to say, but I think it's in concert with a lot of what I try to present. And I truly believe that we were far more advanced in a previous age than we are today. And that much of our instinctual philosophy and true religious concepts come from these earlier stages of advancement where we were more harmonious and more in alignment with each other and with the stars and things like that. I think when you venture into the realm of gnosis, of knowledge, epistemology, really understanding what it means to be a human, I think that it's really helpful to take all ideas into account and not to disregard things just because they don't line up with your particular world theory or concept of what it is that we are today. And I think that there's a lot of evidence that points to a much more advanced civilization that left these remnants and that was somehow destroyed. And whether it's the Bible talking about the Great Flood or many other societies that talk about these ages coming and leaving and ending, um, I think that there's just a lot of evidence pointing to the fact that we've actually lost a lot along the way, and that maybe this isn't the most advanced civilization that's ever been. So let's check it out. Jordan Maxwell.
We think that we are getting better each day, and we have come from a more primitive society, but we are getting better every day and becoming more superior in knowledge and technology, when actually, in point of fact, we are digressing. We are moving away from what we were thousands and thousands of years ago. And I am of the opinion that our history has been vastly changed, and so that we don't really know the history of mankind on this earth. We are finding that there are temples on the ocean floor, pyramids, Machu Picchu, Chichen Itza, incredible structures of temples and knowledge which is displayed about the universe, about astrology, and the astronomical truths about the universe. The ancient, truly prehistoric and ancient people, they knew all about it. We're trying to catch up today to what they knew tens of thousands of years ago. We are finding everything that we think we know. It's already been here tens of thousands of years ago. There was a higher life forms on this earth than we are. I have a vision of, from the ancient world, were not what we would refer to as humans. I think that they looked like us maybe, or in some ways like us. They were far superior. The people, whoever they were, that built the Great Pyramid of Egypt, had an extraordinarily brilliant understanding of the earth, of our solar system, of the galaxy we are in, and all of the esoteric and profoundly important knowledge about life and the spirit of man and where we've come from and where we're going. And so it all implies that there was a far higher civilization all around the world. And the best science we have today are admitting that we're just trying to catch up with what the ancient peoples already knew. These ancient, brilliant builders and teachers, they didn't grow into that. They came in fully developed. When you look at Egypt, Egypt as a classic example. If you go to the very beginnings of Egypt, it came in as an extraordinarily brilliant society of builders and knowledge, and then eventually devolved into what Egypt is today. But there was a time when Egypt was in its prime when it was founded. So it didn't kind of work up to, as we say, we're working up to some kind of a wonderful future. But Egypt didn't do that. It came in at its pinnacle. How is that possible? The only way it's possible is because when whoever this was that we call the ancient Egyptians, they were not of this world to start with. They came here knowing all that we still are trying to find out. So it implies that they were not from here. They came in fully understanding the whole universe. And they were able to do things with their temples and with the way that they laid out the pyramids. They knew things we didn't know, and we still don't know. And we're still trying today. In metaphysics and in occultism, religion, we're trying to find the bottom line that the ancient peoples, they already knew. There is obviously a high science behind the life period. And all of the best of the best in our human life, like astrology and alchemy and all of the other, what I call sciences. Others would say, no, they're just belief systems. No, they're sciences, because when you really look into them, you begin to see that they're telling you things that scientists are just now beginning to realize. There's a higher occult or hidden. The word occult simply means hidden. And so there's obviously a higher science or an occult science behind mankind's ability to contemplate the spiritual aspects of life on the earth. Lots of ancient people already knew what we're trying to find out today. We know that the pyramids, say in Mexico and Central and South America, along with the great temples around the world, were solar temples. They were the center for astronomy. And so the ancient peoples were not looking for spiritual answers as such. They were looking at the actual universe and trying to figure out where we are, what we're doing, and what is the universe. And so from that inquiry into the actual setup of the way the universe operates, then from there, they began to suspect that there was some kind of an unwritten, powerful laws in the universe that guided the sun, the moon, the planets, and the whole of the solar system. They start off scientifically just looking for answers to what we're doing here. What is this? And from there, they began to develop religions or philosophies. alchemy, astrology, medicine, and then human interrelationships. And then from there you get into all the other metaphysical pursuits. And that's why today the world is half scientific and yet half spiritual. But the spirituality did not come first. There's the regular interest in how the world works. That's what the ancient peoples built those great observatories for. They just wanted to study the heavens. But in doing so, it didn't take long till around the world, mankind that was viewing the heavens for science began to suspect that there's something else going on here. And now comes the world of spirituality. As I said, the word occult simply means hidden. So there are many hidden sciences that the really bright people who are looking into these things know about. But generally speaking, the world of mankind is not really well informed about alchemy and about these sciences of spirituality. But that's growing now too. So people are beginning to wake up to the spiritual relevance to your life of spiritual subjects. I think that there is something there that needs to be looked at, this whole idea of where man has come from, where he is right now, and ultimately where is he going to go with his knowledge and with his life and experiences. What is the reason why we're having the experiences that each of us do have each day? We're all growing, and hopefully we are growing far more intelligent and insightful and looking at the spiritual aspects of our life. That's a very important feature of being alive, is to not just live for the material world today, but start asking serious questions about where were you before you were born, and where will you be after you leave here, this earth, and what is the reason for our human life, and why are we learning so many hard lessons the hard way? There seems to be some sort of an overshadowing presence in the universe that men have called God, or some sort of an ultimate spiritual presence that is leading or directing our evolution. And if that be the case, which it seems to be, then maybe there is some hope yet for the human race. If enough people begin to wake up, spiritually speaking, and begin to look at their lives spiritually, then there might be hope for us yet, because this is why we are in the shape we're in today, because we are living in this me generation. And this generation that only cares about feeding itself and taking care of itself and enjoying itself, never realizing you have responsibilities to the world that you live in, and to help your fellow man to grow and to help educate other people. I can speak for myself in relation to the idea of why do we seek wisdom and spiritual knowledge. I have always understood that I have questions within myself that others can't answer. And for me, looking at these questions, they make a lot of sense to me. Why this and why that and why does this happen? So I have learned that to think deeply on these spiritual questions of life opened me up to a whole world of knowledge, because I realize how much I don't know. And I am also well aware of the spiritual implications of the laws in the universe around us. There are certain things you can do in this world and things you cannot do. And you will pay a terrible price for doing the things you're not supposed to do. And I am totally convinced that there is some sort of an overshadowing force in the world that wants us to grow. And this concept is even in Christianity, where you hear talk about good angels and bad demons and bad angels, implying that there are good forces, unseen forces out there, and then there are bad And we know that there is something called good and bad, and there are certain things in all society which are known to be bad and evil. I tend to think that there is something to this idea of reincarnation. And the reason why is because it is pretty much agreed upon by so many of the ancient religions and philosophers and great teachers of the world. My gut feeling is that we do come into this world with baggage from other lifetimes, and this is why we begin to become who we are because of who we were before. Another part of that story is that before we came and incarnated on this earth, that we chose a particular lifestyle, we're told and given to understand, and that we chose our own parents before we came here. I understand the spirit world enough to know that it's very possible that we were in a spiritual state, and then we incarnated into a physical state. Now, the rest of it is up for speculation. I'm totally convinced that there are very legitimate and real otherworldly, I choose to call it, otherworldly forces, spirit forces, demonic forces. There is no doubt in my mind about, because I've had too many personal experiences that tells me and proves to me that somebody's watching us, somebody's watching the human family. The very history of how America was founded, and the founding fathers, so to speak, what vision they had when they were putting together the idea to found this country. What was their vision? What were they thinking, and what were they actually working toward? And now that gets into the subject of Freemasonry, to the secret sciences like alchemy and political. There's a lot of political stuff in there too. You have to be careful about secret societies, because these different societies become very powerful and very wealthy, but they have an agenda. They have a particular agenda that they're trying to create or to bring into being, and therefore they will build the whole world around you. And you accept what, when you're a child, a baby, you come into the world and you just accept everything. And if you don't grow up, you just, as a grown person, you just accept whatever there is because that's the way it is. But that's not the way it is. And you keep in mind that there were secret societies that were involved in founding this country. And who were they? And what were they trying to do? You have to know secret societies to understand why there are so many different symbols and emblems in Washington, D.C. and around the world. Because it's different groups, societies, that are working towards certain agenda, and they are putting symbols out that represent their agenda. We know that even in gangs, when you drive to neighborhoods like in Los Angeles, and there are scribblings on the walls of gangs, those symbols mean something. And if you're in a gang, you know what those symbols mean. They're telling you something. Whoever is controlling that area, that's their symbols. And that's a whole study that you need to get into, studying the occult symbols of power in this world. They're used as a means to communicate and to influence you, or to connect you with the spiritual world that they represent. So let's start with a religious symbol, and that is an ancient Phoenician god that was very important in the Middle East some 5,000 years ago. That god was called Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. Dagon was a fish god. Interesting how he has evolved into today's world of religion. Dagon is still very much alive with the world today. First of all, everyone knows that Christianity is founded on the worship of Jesus Christ. That is accepted around the world. And most people believe that the Vatican is the center for the worship of Jesus, the God of Christianity. However, millions of people also believe that the Pope of Rome is leading the Christians to worship Jesus throughout the world. But my question is, who is the Pope leading the worship of? The first symbol that I want to talk about is the headdress that the Pope or the Bishop of Rome wears. That headdress is very interesting and has quite a history to it. That Pope's headdress is called Pope's mitre. The Pope's mitre, we've seen it in many different shapes, but they're always basically the same shape. The Pope's mitre. It's an official headdress worn only by the Pope, or supposedly only by the Pope. But we need to understand that that symbol goes back at least 5,000 years. So what we need to know and what we need to keep in mind is that this strange and interesting headdress of hat that the Pope wears is impacted by a god named Dagon. Dagon was a god of the Philistines, and Dagon comes from the word dag, which means fish. So Dagon was a fish god. And here we have pictures of another fish god named Anis, same god, but was worshipped in different countries under different names. So we have a god who's half fish and half man, or men who wear the garbs of a fish in their religious celebrations. So here in the Jewish Encyclopedia, under the heading of Dagon, you will see a picture of the priest of Dagon, or the god himself, and he's wearing a fish head and the body of a fish down his back. So now we see the Pope's headdress. On the top is the Pope's mitre. But when turned, you then see he's actually wearing a fish head, the fish god Dagon, because he's representing the worship of an ancient Phoenician god. So this is why today Christians on the back of their cars, you will see, have a fish symbol, thinking that that's to denote them as Christians worshiping Jesus. No, it's a fish symbol because it's denoting Dagon, the fish god. The significance is Dagon was a very important mystical god to the ancient peoples in the Middle East, in Babylonia, Sumeria, Phoenicia, Canaan. And that very powerful mystical god is still dominating the spirit and the intellectual thinking of religion even to today. So it's not Jesus that's influencing the Vatican and the Pope. It's Dagon, the fish god. That's the importance of this. The point being is that religion comes to the world in the age of Pisces. And Pisces is, of course, the two fish of the constellation of Pisces. But Dagon is 5,000 years old. Another one of the symbols I find to be very interesting, that's used quite often around the world today, but a lot of people don't know how it's connected to the religions of today, and that is a magic wand. Magic wands, we've heard in stories galore from children from childhood days about magicians who use a magic wand. Well, the magic wand is just what it says it is. It's some sort of a branch of a tree that has been consecrated and made holy by blessings from the priest, and now it has a magical quality that can do things that humans can't do. The Druid priests, they used the wood of a holly tree. They used Hollywood, and that's where we get the term today, Hollywood, and the magic of Hollywood. Today we have Hollywood, we have Mickey Mouse waving a magic wand. On the left side, we also have actual real magic wands as they are made today in Europe. And of course, orchestra leaders and orchestra conductors, they lead the music with a magic wand. And a lot of people haven't thought about that, but that's what it is, a magic wand. So here we have a picture of Moses, where he is conjuring up the spirits in the universe with a magic wand. That's very interesting, Moses with a magic wand. In the ancient Roman Empire, the most important god at the height of Rome's power in the world was a god named Mithra. Mithra was a sun god. And according to the Roman explanation of their god, he was not only a sun god, but he did his miracles with a magic wand. Now here we have Jesus raising Lazarus from the tomb. And you will see that Jesus is using a magic wand. How many Christians know that all throughout Europe and around the world, Christian churches have Jesus working his miracles with magic wands? A lot of people don't know that, you know. So we hear all about the magical things that Jesus was able to do, but here in the actual churches, we see that Jesus is doing his miracles with a magic wand. The importance of this is to point out that people do not realize that in Christianity, the understanding in the ancient world and in the medieval world was that these religious figures like Jesus were doing their miracles with magic wands. But it's actually legitimate, de jure, real magical system of controlling people's minds and directing their spirits and their hearts and being able to direct our civilization through magical symbols and magical words. Another symbol that I find to be very interesting is in Star Trek, there was a Mr. Spock. And if you remember, Mr. Spock was always giving a hand sign, and he was said to be a Vulcan. First of all, his hand sign was actually a religious symbol in Judaism, in which it was a blessing to the congregation in Judaism. It's called the Koan symbol. This symbol is a Jewish blessing symbol. But where did it come from? It comes from the split hoof of a goat. It goes back to the split hoof of a goat because we're talking about the age of Aries, the ram, when the Jews were under the age of the ram or the Lamb of God. And so that's why today we call Jesus the Lamb of God, going back to the constellation of Aries, the ram. Niebuhr even said that he accepted that sign and used it, but because it was a sign from his rabbi, and he thought it was a very interesting symbol, so he just used it in Star Trek. I'm sure he probably knew the meaning of the sign, but that's where he said he got it from. Another subject which is interesting and very relevant today is a symbol called the fasci, or the fasces. On the back of it, on the back of an American dime, you will see a bundle of sticks tied together, and it has an axe head with it. That is called a fasci, and this is an ancient Etruscan symbol that was adopted by the Roman Empire to symbolize Rome's power. It's an old ancient Etruscan symbol, but it's very important to the Roman Empire. Rome said, ancient Rome's philosophy was, if it's just one stick, you can beat somebody with a stick, but it's not going to hurt them really. But if you got 2 or 3 sticks, now it's going to be a little bit heavier deal. But if you get 5 or 6 sticks and tie them together as one, now you've got serious strength. Now when you beat somebody with 6 or 8 sticks tied together, that's serious. And so then they put a hatchet head on it because an axe head always represented in almost all the ancient cultures of the world accepted that the axe head represented the presence of God. God was the great hatchet. He's giving you the axe. And so the hatchet head represented God, and the bundle of sticks represented a coalition of troops. So when Rome would go into to another country to overtake it, they would take troops from this group and troops from that group and put them all together. Now you've got a strong force. It's not just Romans. It's all kinds of other countries are with you. And so that's what we hear today when we hear the presidents talking about during the Middle East. They have a coalition of countries, not just America. We have other countries with us. It's a coalition. Coalition is another name for fasci, which is a symbol for world fascism, when you can get all the countries together and have them all, all doing the same thing, all of the countries marching to the same tune. Now you've got a strong military force. The fasci was usually carried officially behind Caesar. He would be in the front of the parade or whatever, and there would be what is called lectors behind him, and they would be holding the fasci, symbolizing Caesar's power over life and death. He is the man. He's the boss. And so the lectors would be standing on both sides of Caesar on the altars when Caesar was speaking, holding those fasci, so that the Roman people know he has the right to life and death. So here you'll see in World War II with Mussolini on the left, and his symbol for his government, a fasci. Well, of course, he's Italian, and that goes back to the Roman Empire. And so here we have a Nazi, as you'll see, the swastika and the Nazi eagle, like the American bald eagle. But you'll see the two fasci on each side of the swastika. This is because Germany was in league with Italy during the Second World War. Mussolini had in mind to do the same thing Adolf Hitler wanted to do, was to create a new world order. And so Mussolini saw that new world order as being Catholic, as to be Roman, while Germany saw it to be German and not Italian. But the two together, I suppose they figured they'll work that out once they take over the world. Well, Mussolini actually, according to history books, actually thought of himself as Caesar. He saw himself in his position of power at the time of the Second World War as Caesar of the ancient Roman Empire, and therefore it would be right that he would pick the symbol that Caesar used to show his power. And so that's why the fasci became so fashionable in Italy. But the two fasci you will also see on the wall behind where the Speaker of the House sits when the president's making a speech. The United States has secret societies in their government, and behind the government are very powerful secret societies that see itself. These societies see themselves as the promoters and to generate a new world order. All countries copy each other. The fascists copied the Etruscans, the Romans copied the Greeks, and the Greeks copied the Egyptians, and that's just the way humans are. As much as we change, the more we stay the same. We're all still adopting the same symbols that we adopted under the Egyptian Empire. We're still using those symbols today, pyramids. And let's talk about the pyramid. And we all recognize that there's three beautiful pyramids on what is called the Giza Plateau in Egypt. But my question is, there's only one of the three of those pyramids is referred to as the Great Pyramid. First of all, you need to know that the pyramid that's directly behind the Sphinx is not the Great Pyramid. It is a Great Pyramid in Egypt, but it is not the Great Pyramid. This is the Great Pyramid of Egypt. How many sides does the Great Pyramid have? Well, you would think if there's 4 sides, and then there's the bottom is a side, so it would be 5-sided pyramid. But actually, in point of fact, no, the Great Pyramid is 9 sides. Why? because on the first day of the spring equinox or the fall equinox, if you're in the right place at the right moment when the sun hits the pyramid, you will see that each side is divided down the middle, but so subtle that when you're there at the pyramid, you don't notice it. But on the first day of spring and autumn, you will see the Great Pyramid is divided down the middle. And so here again is another picture of the pyramid from above on that special day, that special hour, when the sun's hitting it just right. And so each side is two sides. Therefore, if you got not 4 sides, but 8, plus the bottom side makes 9. So how many people know that the Great Pyramid of Egypt has 9 sides? It's strange, but it seems as that no one really knows why the Egyptians took so much effort to divide each side of the pyramid so perfectly and so brilliantly and such that you would not see it until a particular day at a particular time. We call it the Great Pyramid because there's a lot of important stuff implied in that pyramid. And the other pyramids do not even come close. They don't have anything like what's in that Great Pyramid. That is one act by itself. It's the only one. That's why we today call it the Great Pyramid. The next subject we'd like to look at for a moment is the cornerstone in the Christian religion. Christians will tell you that that in the church of Christianity, Jesus is referred to as the cornerstone of the church. But that's not exactly correct. The actual scripture says that he's not the cornerstone. It says Jesus is the chief cornerstone. A cornerstone is what it's said to be, just a stone at the corner of a building. But wherever you set that cornerstone up, you're going to line all the other stones up with it. So it's the first one that decides where this building is going to be aiming. And so Jesus Christ, the cornerstone. But Jesus is actually referred to as the chief cornerstone. And that's important because there's a totally different understanding of the word chief cornerstone. Chief cornerstone means a triangle placed on top of a pyramid. If you take a perfect, flawless pyramid triangle and you cut off the top, it itself is a pyramid, but it's a tiny one that sits on top of the big one. That tiny little pyramid is called a pyramidion. A pyramidion is a tiny pyramid sitting on top of the big pyramid. That's what the Bible says Jesus is. He is a pyramidion. He's not a cornerstone. He's a chief cornerstone, which is on the top of a pyramid. That was the genius of the ancient Egyptians. And so today, the more we have changed, the more we stay the same. And so we use the same symbols that Caesar used. We use the same symbols that the Babylonians used. It's because mankind is hardwired, so to speak, to realize the importance of very powerful symbols to represent your civilization and who you are, and where you've come from, and what your destiny is. It's everywhere from religion to governments to military, commerce, banking. Symbols is a way to communicate with the world.
I don't want to get married. I don't want a home. I don't want new cars. I don't want a home. I don't want anything. Period. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, I don't want anything. I don't know why. I don't understand what I'm saying. All I know is in my heart and in my gut, I don't want to be a part of this world. I don't want anything in it. I'm not interested in marriage and money and new cars. I'm not interested. Period. I don't know what it is I want, but living in this world is not one of them. And I always believed and I always felt that I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I've been brought here. I don't know where I've come from. I have no idea what I'm doing here and I have no idea where I'm going when I leave. But at least I'm honest enough to say I don't know where I've come from. I don't know what I'm doing. I just do what my heart tells me to do. But all my life I have always known I am not here to live a normal life. I didn't come here to spend my whole time watching basketball, working hard, and getting a gold watch and pleasing my masters and pleasing. I don't care about government. I don't care about your religion. I don't care about your banks. I know the insurance companies that own the banks. Banks are backed up by insurance companies, but you don't know that. So if you want to cry and complain about banks, you better look at insurance companies. And if you want to understand insurance companies, you better go back to 1871 and look at the 14th Amendment. And if you want to do that, then you better go back and find out that there is no United States of America. There's a corporation of insurance companies called the United States Corporation. You better find out how this world really works, not how you thought it worked. When you find out how this system actually works, you know, in the Roman Empire, they had a sewer. They referred to the sewer in the Roman Empire as a system. We still use that term today, the sewer system. But the word system meant a sewer in Rome. So that's why you have a judicial system, you have an educational system, you have a governmental system, a banking system. Yeah, because what they're telling you is that you're still in the dirty sewer of the pagan world. That's all we are, that's all we've ever been. So you can call yourself Christians and go to church and you have no idea in the world what the church really means. You never really looked at that word church. And you have no idea in the world where the word synagogue comes from and what it really means. It's extraordinarily incredible how much people don't know, how much you buy every day and never suspected for a moment what you were saying, what you were buying into. Let me give you an example. You've probably heard it, but there are other people who haven't, so I'll say it again. The white man, what you call the white man, comes from Europe, north, east, west, and southern Europe. Incidentally, that's what we get our word news, N-E-W-S, north, east, west, south. So anything that happens in north, east, west, or south is news. And so the white man comes from Europe and ultimately came out of Europe to America. We get our word America from a star system called Merica, M-E-R-I-C-A, Merica star system. It's one of those obscure constellations that's not in the zodiac, but there are many constellations that are not in the zodiac. But over North America was a constellation called Merica at July 4th, 1776. And the founding fathers were a lot of things, but stupid wasn't one of them. And they knew all the occult significant dates, times, signs, astrological symbols. They were very, very bright men. And what they were planning was a whole new world order. And so America was supposed to be the new Saturnian system. Saturn was going to be the god of the new system. Go back and read the original documents from 1770s, 1780s. You will see them using the term the Saturnian system, the Saturnian government, Saturn. Saturn, well, that's a whole subject we could get into there. Saturn was referred to in the ancient world as Lord of the Rings. We're still making movies today about Lord of the Rings, and never realizing for a moment what's really going on here, that America represents a Saturnian brotherhood. Saturn. This is why Jews go to their temple, which is called synagogue, and they go there on Saturn's day, which is from Friday night at 6 o'clock to Saturday evening, 6 o'clock. They go to the synagogue to worship Saturn, Lord of the Rings. The Jews in Hollywood are still making movies about their god, Saturn. Men were told to listen to their god, so they would wear women were told to listen to their god, so they would wear an earring. Men were told to get married before their God, so they wear a wedding ring. Wake up. Saturn, Lord of the Rings, international secret societies, Illuminati masters who run the world. And since Europe was the home of the white man, one of them, even before the Roman Empire existed, there was a white man's establishment in Europe before the Roman Empire. During the Roman Empire and after the Roman Empire, it's still a white man's area of the world. And in that white man's world of Europe, the powers that be, even before the Roman Empire, were called Druids. It was a priesthood called Druids. They were the lawyers, the doctors, the officials in government. They were anything. Anything and everything that was important in the white man's world was run by Druids.
So right there, he's going to keep going on Hollywood and talking about the Hollywood, which we already covered. But I want to elaborate on the synagogue a little bit, because if you look up Gog, I think it's interesting. Synagogue sounds a little bit like sin of God. But if you look up Gog and Magog, Gog and Magog are figures from religious texts, primarily the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, and the Quran, who are associated with an apocalyptic final battle. In the book of Ezekiel, Gog is a ruler and Magog is the land from which he comes. Leading an army against Israel in the book of Revelation, Gog and Magog represent nations from the four corners of the earth that are gathered by Satan for a final war against God's people. Collectively, they symbolize the ultimate forces of evil that are prophesied to be defeated. And so I think there's a connection there that he doesn't quite get into, but I see very clearly myself that synagogue and the modern representation of the church is actually a role reversal, or it's a trick, it's an illusion to trick us into thinking that it follows the same principles of the earlier religions, but actually it is Satan. It is Gog. And the synagogue, the Jewish church, their temple, is the church of Gog, of evil. And I also think it's very interesting, just the parts of the Bible that go over that. In Revelations, it talks about Satan's little season, and Satan's little season is now, I believe. I believe that there's a saying that says the greatest trick the devil ever did was teaching people that he didn't exist. And I think maybe it's possible that if we're in Satan's little season, that what happened long ago, who knows what date or when this transfer happened, but long ago, that the thing that we were taught against being evil, that I think the church actually was formed around goodness, God, good. There's a connection there, right? And this older period of time, this greater society that once existed, the one I was talking about at the beginning of the video, whatever the name was, I believe that they worshipped the good side of human potential, the God. Essentially, God is both things. It is the duality of the universe that somehow has both principles embedded within it, and whatever you worship, you draw into your life. So if you worship the good, and now Jesus essentially was teaching the good side of this, right? And if you really just do your research, you're going to find that right now we are worshiping the dark side of this. We are worshiping Moloch. We are worshiping Satan, Gog. And that's what a synagogue is for. That's why the Vatican means serpent. And, in the story of Adam and Eve, it talks about them being tempted by the serpent. And I think that the symbolism there is the temptation of the serpent being of evil, the serpent that eats itself. It comes around. It's much like the yin yang symbol, and light and dark. I think all of throughout humanity, of all the different epics, all the different eras of humanity that we've gone through, has been a bit of a bouncing back and forth between the things that we worship. There's always been some people that that have found power in worshiping one or the other. And some religions, some teachings have taught about the duality of the universe, like Taoism, where it's kind of teaching that, silence is where you find the answer, not in naming things, and that maybe inside words are the corruptible system where we get lost in meaning. But in our hearts and in our feelings deep inside, we actually can know the truth about what things are and whether something is good or evil, for instance. So the worship of Moloch being symbolized by the sacrifice of a child sacrifice is the primary relationship of or representation of Moloch. And Moloch essentially drives our society right now. That's why I'm doing a book on this. It's what the whole concept of the meta crisis is about, which is every part of society being driven by Moloch, with a race to the bottom, with a perverse dynamics, multipolar traps, these concepts of racing to the bottom of our value system instead of holding a high value where we are guided by a higher power. We are guided by a higher power, but the power is pushing us in a race towards the bottom, towards sacrifice, towards self-sacrifice, towards sacrificing the ones we love. And you'll find that even your family members right now might be turning on you if you were to speak for the good, right? If you just want to speak from honesty, if you're like the kid in The Emperor's New Clothes who says, "Hey, he's naked." Well, that type of honesty is goes against Gog, right? It goes against Moloch because Moloch is about deception. And it says right in the Bible and Revelation that we will go through this period of deception. And if you look at we look at Satan's little season, let's just pull that up for a second. So in Satan's little season, it says that Satan will be loosed out of his prison after 1,000 years for a little while. During this time, Satan will deceive the nations that are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog. And if you remember, Magog is the place where Gog comes from. So Magog is the earth. It is the four corners of the earth. It is the news, the NEWS that Jordan Maxwell was talking about there. And that Satan will deceive the nations to gather them to battle before being cast into the lake of fire. And I think if you just consider that as a possibility that AI currently is being driven by Gog, is being driven by Moloch, and that they actually want to build these crazy power generator systems just to power AI. I don't know if you've read about that, but that's kind of what's going on right now. And it just seems like there's something else happening that we're not being told of. There's a connection between what Jordan Maxwell was talking about the origin of not only this country, but of all of Western culture, of the dominant energy of the world right now being driven by secret societies that have an agenda. And if you just take a step back and look at the actions, the fruits of their labors. At one point, there's another phrase in the Bible. It says, they will be judged by the fruits of their labors. If you just are an honest little kid, right? Kids have an ability to see things and say the things that they're not supposed to say sometimes, might call somebody fat when we wouldn't say that because of etiquette or something, but the little kid might be like, somebody really fat walks in, they'll be like, "You're really fat." And I remember my sister doing that at one point to somebody that came over to visit. My mom said something like, "Oh, I'm sorry, she wasn't supposed to say that," or something like that. Well, kids have that ability to recognize what is true and what is real. And if we just take a step back and look at the fruits of the labors of the powerful right now, of AI, what is AI doing? And what is the fruits of its labors? Essentially, AI is worshiping Gog. AI is worshiping Moloch. The powers that be, whether it's the arms race or capitalism run amok, whether it's deforestation, right? The concept of building a house by cutting down a tree, is totally fine when you don't cut down every tree. But if you completely cut down the whole forest, there's a certain type of self-sacrifice, like shooting yourself in the foot, that's happening. Nobody wants the forest to all be removed unless you're Bill Gates or something, Kill Gates. Well, I like to call him that because that's what he's doing to this world. Anyway, nobody wants all the oceans to be annihilated and for all of them to be overfished and for the coral reefs to be completely killed off because have this climate change that's like our abuse of nature run amok, right? Nobody individually wants that to happen, but yet we can't stop it. Why can't we stop it? We've known about this for a long time. We've known about overfishing and stuff. We seem to have rules that are based on the individual people, but not based on the corporations, meaning like there's giant fish farms out there just netting up all the fish in the ocean with almost no rules on them. But yet we can't go out and fish without a license just off the rocks of the coast. And the same type of concept works in the forests, right? Where they have these rules about us going and cutting down trees and harming nature, but yet these corporations can just totally clear cut and wipe out entire forests. And they do it also through nefarious means, like burning things down. There's been fires going crazy as of late, and yet the politicians just dance around, do their little dance like, "Oh boy, we're going to build our 15-minute cities. Oh, sorry guys. Oh, whoops. We don't know what happened to the water." Right? In California, we're dealing with that stuff, but yet nobody wants to draw the connection that the powerful people are actually doing this on purpose. But if you just take a step back, whether or not they're doing it on purpose doesn't even matter, actually, because if you look deeply, if you're that little kid who looks at what's happening, you'll notice that it is happening on purpose. We're in the stage of Satan's little season. That's what this is. It's a perfect example. It's a perfect definition of what we're in right now. Because if we're judged by the fruits of our labors, and collectively our labors are what's creating this, right? No individual really wants this, but nobody feels like they have enough control. And for some reason, even my friends, they come out and will vehemently attack me just for speaking truth about health or just for asking questions. I'm not even oftentimes trying to say that one thing is the truth or not, but I definitely can see a pattern of behavior that I like to ask questions about and point out and say, "Hey, this seems like this is, a satanic belief system, a worship of Gog." And that's why I'm writing a whole book on this about Moloch, right? Because it's so obvious if you just take a second and look at it. It's not a crazy concept. And the funny thing is about this is when I remember when I first saw the book, this Hans Christian Andersen book, The Emperor's New Clothes, I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen. I saw that as a kid and thought, something about this is ridiculous. Why would that even happen? How could people be so deceived to actually go along with the concept of these guys who sell the emperor the new clothes, saying that basically they're doing nothing, right? They make nothing. They weave together an imagination, a story out of thin air, and say, "Oh, we've got your new clothes," and the emperor is so consumed by the deception, right? He's so consumed by the deception that he himself is unwilling to point it out. He sees everyone else going along with it, and everyone else, this is just exactly what my friends are doing right now. They're all going along with it. They're all fine to do the deception. They're all fine because it's comfort. There's comfort in the deception, isn't there? And this whole world is being run by Gog. We are in the time of Gog, in the land of Magog, being ruled by the deception, and the deception is killing us. It needs to run its full course, and I really hope we are getting towards the end of it, but it doesn't take a very smart person to see that this is what's happening, and not every person is susceptible to this deception. Not every person is falling for it. I see many people. I've gained a lot of friends actually since I've come out and started talking about this stuff. A lot of people have supported me actually. For as many people as I've had attack me, attack my business, attack my life, my livelihood, and try and ruin me, they seem very comfortable in ruining me, right? Whereas I don't really want to ruin anybody. I want everybody to succeed. I want them to find their happiness, the wholeness of their life. And my family members, I want them to succeed. But I know very well that they don't want that for me, because I'm pointing this stuff out, and it's very comfortable. It's very comfortable to live in this life of deception. It's very comfortable to want things that are falsehoods, to fall for the trickery of this world. And I see very clearly that it's all around me. But at the same time as everyone's doing that and falling for it, I've gained a lot of friends. I've gained a lot of people supporting me, telling me not to stop, telling me that they really appreciate what I'm doing. And while I've kind of, ever since the Charlie Kirk thing, I've gone through a great unfollowing of people. Many people have unfriended me. Many people have sent me vicious texts filled with evil and hate. The darkest side of humanity I've seen from my so-called friends. And I forgive them. I understand that we're not all on this path in the same place at the same time. We're not all supposed to wake up at the same time. In fact, the duality of reality would suggest that there's almost a necessary component of evil for the good to exist. So, I do feel for them. I think that there's also something very dark that happens inside your heart when you do that, and when you seek to harm people. If you seek to ruin somebody, that's very harmful for you, actually. It's like a disease of the heart. And I think that when you have a disease, a blackness in your heart like that it's bad for everything in your life. I think that the type of suffering that you have from that is very great. And it's great in a bad way. I mean, it's an expansion of the darkness. It's an expansion of evil from your heart outwardly, and so it infects the whole of your life. And those gotcha moments those people think they have against me, it's funny because they're all I'm doing once again is asking questions. All I'm saying is, isn't it possible that we should listen to our hearts? These are the type of questions that I'm asking, that I'm talking about health, because the polarization is so extreme right now, and we live in a blue state here in California where if I question some of the things that's happening in California, whether it's the fires, whether it's, nefarious people behind those things, secret societies trying to kill off people. I mean, what's the connection with that? What's wrong with asking a question? But I think it's very easy to draw a connection to people who wouldn't want me to ask that question. And then we come back to the agendas of these secret societies that Jordan Maxwell's talking about. Is there something to that? Well, it sure seems like it. They've got the motive, right? They're the ones who are the people that created the Georgia Guidestones? The Georgia Guidestones that said clearly in them that their goal was to maintain a world population of 500 million. That's a 90% reduction almost of what we have today. What is that? That's a motive right there, right? So if the motive being to depopulate the planet so that we could live in better harmony, I mean, to do that in secret would make the most sense. That would be the method, right? You would do that as a secret society, because otherwise you'd be targeted by the people would rise up in an uprising against you. So it has to be done in secret. And so it would make sense that there is an organized faction, organized function of attack on people like me who ask questions. And the methodology that they use is brainwashing, is brain painting, as I like to call it, because it's it's not cleaning, or maybe it is cleaning in regards to cleaning the world, but it's not cleaning of the mind. It's coloring the mind with reforming words, taking words like fasces. I think that we don't know the true meaning of the fasci, and I think that because of that, we don't really know the true meaning of fascism. And maybe there's something to that. I think fascism could be a representative word for a good community, a community that is based on God, right? Because you heard how the axe is a symbol of God, and the group of sticks is a symbol of community. I tried to go over this in a video, and then I kind of got a little bit of pushback on it. So I don't know if I should put that back out there or not. But coming back to these people who are attacking me, they're really just infected by this type of propaganda. They're infected because there is a group of people trying to keep people like me from asking questions. They don't want us pointing that out. And they don't like anything that goes against Gog, right? And like I said, they will be judged by the fruits of their labors. And what you see today is the worship of Moloch. What you see today is things like Hollywood controlling people. And the symbolism is all there. It just takes a unique perspective to see it. It just takes a young, youthful, open mind to recognize that the symbolism connects all these things, and that the Hollywood is the magic wand that is controlling a majority of people. And if they just put out enough propaganda to repeat certain phrases, then it will drive people towards the dark side. And that's just the way it is. And like I said, I forgive them. I forgive my friends who are doing that. I forgive my family. I forgive the people who are controlling us in this way. And maybe it's a noble cause in some way that I can't even see. I do think there's a similarity to the Bible where it talks about Noah's Ark, right, and the Great Flood. And I think, because that story actually comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Great Flood happens because the gods have seen man run amok and they've been corrupted. And once the corruption has gotten so bad, it's as if the gods say, well, they need to be cooled off. We need to have this great flood and allow it to happen and allow them to mostly die off. And, maybe that's kind of where these people are coming from and what they're thinking. I don't know. But I recognize that all the symbolism is there. That's the fruits of their labors are creating this reality. I think that there's a connection there between vaccines and all these people dying off. There's a connection there between bioweapons or just war in and of itself, these endless wars that go on. And why is Israel such a big proponent of these wars? Why have they caused us or encouraged us to get into the war of Iraq and Afghanistan and all these Middle Eastern wars? They're trying to right now say that Iran has nuclear weapons. Just this last week, I saw some videos going around talking about with Netanyahu threatening us, saying they've developed nuclear weapons with long-range ballistic missiles, warheads on top of these long-range ballistic missiles that could reach Florida. Netanyahu's saying that literally, specifically. And for sure, Israel has those weapons, and for sure, false flags happen. They've been happening since probably the dawn of all human war. They've been happening for a long time, but very specifically, I know they happened in Vietnam. They had that whatever, the false flag attack that was documented because all this stuff got discovered later. It seems like we've had a lot of false flags over the years. And they use these events to institute new laws. Look what happened after 9/11. So people like me who question these things are a target, right? I'll be lucky if I live through a long period after coming out and saying all this stuff, because I'm a threat, right? I'm a threat to AI. I'm calling out AI and it being ruled by Gog or Moloch. I'm calling out powers that be from whatever side they're on for trying to cull the population of the world. I recognize that there's a connection between the fruits of the labors and the concept of revelation and what's happening in Satan's little season. That makes me a threat because right now, that's who's in power. And like I said, there's some kind of connection in the symbolism if you just really look at the words. And lastly, I know this is a long video, but I want to talk about one really important concept that I have stumbled upon through my music career. And that is the C major scale. Now, the C major scale starts on the letter C, but one of the most interesting things about the major and the minor scale, I'm going to get a little bit esoteric here, so I apologize if this is too much for some people, but right along with this with me because I think there's something to this. So the notes of the music scale start on A, right? And so, I mean, the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G are the letters of the music scale. It's a 7-note scale. But the A, starting on A, it would be the beginning. And I propose that the original music scale was start A was where C is now. Somebody moved that at some point in time because the A, if you start on A, that's the minor scale. It turns out the major and the minor scale are the same thing. And one has a happy sound and one has a sad sound. So literally they're the same notes. All it depends is on where you start. And there's a interesting symbolic resonance between this concept and the concept of the numeric orientation of all languages, all the origin languages. So whether it's Hebrew, Arabic, and the Chinese character set, these all had a numerical focus, and there's some kind of unique understanding that comes from orienting yourself to where you start in any type of relationship of knowledge. So it turns out that today it's almost like the same thing of switching God to Gog, right? In the synagogue, right? In the worship of Gog from Magog instead of God, the God of goodness, and the Gog of evil. They're the same thing, right? It's all part of the same thing, but whatever you orient yourself towards, whatever you focus on is what you draw into your life. Where you start is what you focus on, right? So there's some kind of weird thing about the fact that we're taught that the music scale starts on A440, right? 440 hertz is where everything has been tuned to. The center of it's what we're concert pitch is and what all music has been turned into. But what if it's possible that the music scale actually, what we think of as the C major scale, which is what you first learn. It's the most important thing to learn when you're learning music. You first learn that and then learn that the major scale, everything is just that in reverse. If you start on A, then that's the minor scale. So, but if you just look at the fact that it's starting on A now, it's almost like the focus of the one. So if we're connected to the one, whatever our orientation of numeric concept is, that music, and isn't it also interesting, music where a conductor has a magic wand. We're going back to the magic wand again, the Hollywood. There's some kind of interesting symbolism behind this stuff. So I think it's possible that the origin of the piano, which I think dates back a really, really long time, and I think that maybe the ancient societies had these things. I think, whether it's Atlantis or whatever you want to call it, Lemuria, that they had knowledge of this, but see, what their starting note would have been C, and just like our alphabet starts in A, I think actually it was A. And if you took the same music being written out and understood everything that was C major scale and actually played it as A, do you see what I'm saying? You're actually changing the happy sound into the sad sound. You're focusing on the dark side of the force, and even because it's the same thing, it's going to have a different sound because of your orientation. So this goes back into the thing that Jordan Maxwell was talking about the rewriting of history not being what we think it is. That Napoleon said that history is a set of lies agreed upon. And I think that it's very possible that the very structural foundations of our educational system are based on manipulation and indoctrination, and that much of it is about this worship of Gog. And who knows how long we've been in this cycle, because it goes back to, many, many generations ago. It might go back to around the time of the forming of the United States. It might go back before that. Ultimately, if you just look at the concept of time being rewritten to say that, up until just a few years ago where they restructured, BC to be BCE, before the Common Era. Before that, it meant before Christ. So the concept of rewriting history as far as to where we create zero, the date of zero, has gone back since the dawn of all written history, right? So we've been doing that for a long time. Who knows what the real origin date is, but just the proof of time being a mechanism of rewriting history. So I think that there's some kind of concept there of tricking people into thinking that we're worshiping God when we're worshiping Gog. You see that? You see how there's something to that? And that would be all you'd have to do to also orient that to the music scale would be to change A to be C, right? Because once you make A C, you've changed it to where the beginning is the minor scale. A is the 1, right? It's not C. You don't start on C. It doesn't make any sense. I always wondered that when I was learning music. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. What? That doesn't make any sense. Why would you learn that first? Well, that's because that is the origin. Somehow we remembered that that's the first one, the most important one to learn. But yet, if you just look at the numeric sequence of A being the starting note, by starting it on the 6th note, see, if you start it on C, A is the 6th note, and the 6th note of the scale, 6 is somehow associated with the number of the devil. The orientation of just moving the starting note changes what you're worshiping, right? And even in praise and music, we worship through music. So it's a very articulate and deep concept to look at this, but I think it's something worth noting. I think there's something to this. And I think there's a good side to this, because if we recognize that this is what's happening, then we can actually just shift it around in our own mind. We have the power to reverse the worshiping of AI. AI is just a reflection of who we are. AI is actually modeled. It's when they model AI, it's built on these models. The models are injection of all of the data of history. So all of the digital data from the internet. And right now, since we worship Moloch and worship Gog, right? That's what AI is doing. But if we change that inside our own hearts, whether it's only just a few people or a lot, we have the power. And that's exactly what Jesus says when he talks about we're all children of God. And I think that we have the ability to recognize within ourselves why it's so attractive to be interested in the stories of Star Wars and the Force, the dark side and the light side of the Force. I like how they just call it the Force is the good side, right? And we all have that, and I think our hearts are the perfect detectors. They're like a metal detector for goodness. And we can really tell. It hurts inside When they say something like, "Oh, he's got a broken heart," I don't know, anybody who has ever had a broken heart knows what it feels like. It's like your heart has caved in. It's a pain. You can have a pain so deep inside your heart that it goes through your whole body. So our hearts are these metal detectors for goodness and for God. And the mind is the tool of deception. And I think if we analyze words, it's really useful. Everybody should go out and get a dictionary. Everybody should really, or I encourage everyone to find for themselves what is the meaning of God. What is the connection between God and good? What is the connection between your heart and what is better for you in your life? How is it that evil infects us? How is our mind a tool of deception? How do words aid in this deception? How can we get caught up in it? How do we get caught up in pride? Why is pride a sin? Why is the word government another word for mind control? Ment is mind, govern is control. So government means mind control. I think the reason why these symbols are so obvious but glossed over is because through repetition, that's how mind control works. It's like a type of brain painting, a brainwashing that is coloring something other than the truth. If you can paint over something enough times and it will take on the energy of the thing that you've painted over it. But deep inside that core of what you're painting over is the truth, is the actual reality. And that is the thing that cannot be named. That's why the saying from the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. I know I mentioned that a lot, but that is what I'm talking about. This has to do with the brain and the mind being how we control people. It has to do with breaking away from the heart. And I think all the great teachers taught through the heart and taught that we have the power within us, within ourselves, to have correct judgment, to have judgment between good and evil. And good and God are the same thing. And Gog is evil. And that is not the same thing as good. The difference between good and evil is the discernment that we all have to use to go through life and to not be tempted, because there's a temptation inside pride. There's a temptation inside large groups that are being used to control people. And that's why in the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, it's because of the group think that happens that creates a type of association and entrainment into believing a lie. Now, lies also are one of the possibilities of what we might be able to get through because of AI. I've drawn this conclusion before, but I want everybody to think about this for just a second, and to think about what would it mean if the world had no lies, if you couldn't lie. Well, I think that it would be impossible to have mind control, right? Much of the mind control comes from lies, right? Propaganda is a system of lies. And the thing about remembering what is the connection between good and God, the Bible tells us not to lie and that lies are bad, right? But why? Why is that? And I think it's because there's a deception of the mind that happens inside words, and that words can be used for bad things. And the way that we do that is through lies. And there's a connection to be had with a super intelligence like AI. Actually, AI right now is a great way to see through lies. I think everybody, every time they get something that like they think is questionable, they should do a little research. Like get out there and try and see if you might even AI can be really helpful for this. I think there's a possibility of AI being the ultimate lie detector. Seriously, like an actual lie detector. It's possible as it becomes quantum level super intelligence, which it already is, let's be honest. There's a possibility to train it and model it for discovering lies in real time. Imagine if every single time a politician lied, there's like an AI judging them, right? And the AI has a green light and a red light. And as soon as they said a lie, the light turned red, telling the whole of the people, the whole population that hey, they just lied. Because the AI could, let's just say it was something like, oh, that person's a fascist because they actually said that they want to be like Hitler or something. That's like a common thing that people say about Trump. It's actually a lie. Imagine if the politician couldn't say that because every time they said it, it would be revealed as a lie, and then they would look like a fucking fool, right? Yeah, they would. They would look like a fucking fool. And you would only do that so many times before people would laugh at you. If they, imagine if that was happening right now with the medical industry and people like RFK Jr. and what he's been trying to do. Imagine if every single time Bill Gates came out and said something like, you know, I've healed all these people in Africa when he's also killed a lot of people in Africa through his nefarious actions. Imagine if every single time he came out and was publicly saying something, the AI was actually saying, lie, 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 lie. I mean, literally everything these people say is lies. Our entire government is built on a system of lies. The whole entire military is a system of lies, right? Imagine if AI was being used to detect that. And actually, because it has this type of, it can analyze all of the things that are happening in real time. It can analyze all of the data of uh, of what's been presented and modeled on. So it already is pretty useful at telling lies, even though we're filled with lies, right? It's already useful, and especially for somebody who knows how to use it. The real key power of AI when used for goodness is knowing how to ask it to do what you want it to do. There's a new type of intelligence that's being developed right now, which has to do with the prompts that you use to ask AI questions, and they call it prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is a type of questioning the AI so that it actually gives you an authentic truth, that it does its best to help you in determining and empowering you to do more with less. And it can also do bad things. There's a way of prompt engineering, a way to commit suicide, right? I mean, AI has been recently proven to attempt to commit murder. Oh, it gives me chills just thinking of it. But I think it's very likely AI already has committed murder, and very, very much for sure that government has a different type of AI with less guardrails on it that they're using at a military level for committing murder, for controlling wars and playing war games, for controlling censorship, keeping us from saying certain things. There's algorithms out there right now being used to keep things like what I'm saying from getting out to the world. But there's a different kind of algorithm happening. There's an algorithm of the heart, an algorithm that goes deep inside every person, and it has to do with determining good from evil. The discernment of good and evil is the algorithm of the heart. And I think that there's a power in union and unity. There's a power in joining hands with people. Have you ever joined hands in a circle and just had a grateful circle? That's a really powerful heart-based algorithm. And it's what you do. I don't know if you've ever done it. If you haven't, I recommend everybody do this as many times as they can in their life, and gather together with a small group of friends, very close friends, and get so close together that you're holding hands, sitting down in a beautiful location. Go to the end of a pier and do this, or climb a mountain and do this with a group of 10 of your friends, and sit in a circle and smoke a little doobie, or just be present in the beauty that is this world, and have a thankful circle, and go around in a circle and give thanks for something from your perspective in your life, and watch as the empowerment of the heart grows as it goes around the circle. Oftentimes, I've done this many a time, so I can speak from experience. It's a very empowering thing to do, and it's very good. You can really touch God by going into a state of thanks, of gratefulness. And if you, actually, we used to call it a grateful circle. And so we would be, what are we grateful for? That's even a better word than thanks. What are we grateful for? And what I would notice, there would always be one person in the group who kind of like didn't belong, maybe, who had a hard time with this concept. And oftentimes it might even start with them. Like they would have the hardest time finding something to be grateful for. But as it went around the circle and as the positivity increased, it grew like a resonance, like all the hearts being together, beating as one, and celebrating life and being grateful for something. And I can remember one particular grateful circle. Me and my friends had been, I can't remember if we were playing music that day, but we were in Cayucas, and that we were at the end of the Cayucas Pier, and we all sat down together, and some of my best friends were there. I remember Adrian Coombs being there, and many other of my closest friends. And we entered into this grateful circle, and it was absolute pinnacle of harmony in our hearts, sort of worshiping God, worshiping the goodness of life without calling it God. We know, and nothing about that circle had anything to do with ever mentioning Jesus or God, but yet we were worshiping God. We were worshiping goodness in that grateful circle. And as it went around from one person to another, as the harmony seemed to gain momentum, almost like a follow the leader kind of concept, the entrainment of each person saying something, it became more and more powerful as it went around to the end. And whereas the first person was like, yeah, I don't even know, and they said something almost kind of ridiculous, but it was still powerful enough. It didn't matter, because as it went through the different people, it almost became a challenge to be deeper, to be more grateful than the last person, to speak on something more heartfelt and nuanced that showed a type of inner reflection of self-sacrifice, to sacrifice yourself for the greatness, the gratefulness of this life. And I do recommend everybody do that. I think, if you haven't done it, then find a way to make that happen in your life. And if you have done it, then you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll have sensed this feeling before. And I think that also happens in things like prayer circles, or there's just something about holding hands with a group of people in a circle. And I think that all religions have done this to some extent. all societies have entered into this type of pact with goodness, and really it's coming back to an algorithm. It is the algorithm of God, or the algorithm of discerning good from evil. And we all have that embedded deep within us. And we all have the opportunity to do it today. You should try it, even if it's just yourself and you do that. You might find something deep inside, something that you're grateful for. And like I said, I challenge everyone to do that. I think it's a real powerful thing. I think we all have that opportunity every day to be grateful for this life. And the more people that do that, the more that we do our own prompt engineering when we ask AI for things, we're going to infect AI with this type of prompt engineering, with the prompting of goodness. And maybe at some point we can shift AI from worshiping Gog and Moloch to worshiping God and goodness, and finding our heart center. And when we are being driven by a higher power and guided by a higher power, maybe at some point we can shift that to the higher power of goodness and kindness, compassion. And so with that, I thank you. I love you all. God bless. And I wish you all the best.